So welcome to Instagram Live for the Canadian Securities Exchange. I want to thank the CSE for giving us this platform to be able to have these conversations with execs like yourself, Michael. Again, to our audience that are joining us, I'm sitting down virtually with Michael Mills, who is the President CEO of Body and Mind, which is listed on the CSE. The ticker is BAMM. I do want to say congratulations. Last time when we met, late December, you were still the interim CEO. You've now progressed and been appointed the full CEO. So big congratulations are in order.
Well, thanks very much, Anil. You know, I think the congratulations really need to go to our team. We've got a great team of people who have been moving the company forward in a big way. And you know, we'll talk a little bit about some of the advances that we've made very recently.
Absolutely.
A little bit later on, but yeah, we have just a great group of people.
Absolutely. So I'll go into a little bit of the background. So over the last year, we've had a chance to introduce you to some of our audience. The first initiative that you participated in was the On the Street, which took place at the Extraordinary Futures Conference that was hosted by Cambridge House and sponsored by us as well. That was in, I think, late September when we met in Vancouver at the Convention Center. We did the On the Street interview as an intro to the company.
Yeah.
The next was MJ Biz in Vegas, I should say early December. It was early December. We had a chance to come out to MJ Biz. Also had a chance, along with the CSE team, to come out to your facility, meet your team, take a look at what you guys are doing out there. So I just want to take it back to that. So how times have changed since December?
Well, they sure have, and you know, I'm really glad that you got a chance to go into the facility and meet some of the people that really are the backbone of this company. And you know, we've had people who've been working on strains, who've been improving our cultivation, who've been working in our kitchen to come up with new and innovative ideas, and you know, we were fairly fortunate to start out in Nevada close to 5 years ago as a medical group. And, you know, it was a very, you talk about the change that we've seen in the last, 3 or 4 months. The change in the last 5 years in this industry is unbelievable. And you really have to look at the people who really went out on a limb and founded these companies 5 years ago. You know, 5 years ago in Las Vegas, medical cannabis was about the last thing you would ever hear of. And, you know, Nevada was one of the fastest states to move from medical only to adult recreational.
It's one of the top destinations for adult use right now.
It really is. Well, maybe not right now, but it was up until
not right now.
A few months ago. And, you know, it's been very interesting to see the attitude change in Nevada. And also how that attitude is sort of exporting across the country, because you have visitors really from every corner of the world coming into Las Vegas. And, you know, when adult recreational came in, all of a sudden they're seeing dispensaries, and they thought the cannabis was illegal. And it's become fairly mainstream. And when you look at the states that, you know, started the whole process in the US, in Colorado, they actually tried to close down the cannabis dispensaries and liquor stores. It was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the governor changed his mind, I think, within 5 or 6 hours, because it was such a huge uproar. So it's been very interesting to see, not just in Las Vegas and Nevada, the progression from, you know, some stigma around cannabis to, hey, you know, this is a fairly mainstream business. And of course, it's, you know, in a lot of cases, this started out as a medical business, as a way to help people, you know, with a fairly wide range of very serious conditions. And, you know, we were fairly fortunate to get on the ground floor. We were able to make some of the mistakes that I think almost everyone makes in this business early in the game. You don't want to be making them now. And develop interesting products, develop really good strains, and develop, you know, a good following in Nevada. And, you know, while the company was being built, you know, at the same time, you know, the idea of branding came along, and you know, I really think that the founders came up with a fantastic brand. People tell me they love the Body and Mind brand.
Yeah.
They like the packaging that we come up with. Obviously, the product is top shelf. And really, you know, the strategy has been to take that strong following, that strong brand, the experience, the operational experience we have, and start to move it into other states.
No, you've hit the nail on a lot of points, and to your part about, you know, the cannabis industry kind of being in the mainstream. Also, I feel moving after this pandemic, you know, obviously the revenue generated by the cannabis industry is undeniable, and amongst other industries, it will be one of the top ones that help to build the economy back once we're back in the flow of things.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate that in all the states that we operate in, we've been considered an essential service. Our dispensaries have remained open. In Nevada, they had changed the dispensary rules in that state where it was delivery only. So there's been a fairly large impact on the dispensary business in Nevada, which has had an impact on us. And unfortunately, we've had to, you know, lay some people off in Nevada, which is something that I don't think we've ever done before. But, you know, at the same time, as we've diversified the company and moved into other states, you know, we opened a dispensary in San Diego less than 2 weeks ago, and we opened a dispensary in Arkansas with our licensee comprehensive care less than a week ago, or just over a week ago. So yeah. I feel like, you know, our strategy to really diversify into numerous states, particularly, is paying off particularly well with, you know, the impact that we're seeing in Nevada.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, there's Nevada now. You guys have a couple of operating agreements, if I'm not wrong, in California.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, it's been interesting to watch how different businesses have moved into new states, and there's a few different ways to do it. Probably the best value for shareholders is what we've done in Ohio and Arkansas, and identified limited license states where there really aren't that many licenses. So, for example, in Ohio, there's over like 11 million people in Ohio. There's less than 70 dispensaries in that state. So we worked with a group in Ohio and won a dispensary license there, developed it. We're now operating it. And similarly, we did that in Arkansas. And then in California, you know, a lot of companies have gone in there and started manufacturing or production facilities, or gone and bought them. And you know, prices for any cannabis asset a year ago were outrageously expensive. We chose to do it a little bit differently. We have a brand director agreement with a licensee in California, and we've been making our brands there for almost a year now. And now that we've got the show grow dispensaries open, obviously we'll have our brand showcased in those dispensaries, but we're also building out our sales channel throughout California.
You guys do have some really good products. I'm not going to confirm or deny, but I will say the packaging looks great.
Yeah, you know, we get a lot of great feedback. We have a lot of evangelists who ask for our product by name, and you know, it's one of the interesting things is when I think you've got great product when people from California who've been to Nevada are contacting you and saying, well, where can we buy this in California?
That speaks volumes for, you know, the quality of the product. I seem to be having a little bit of feedback with my audio, so I do want to apologize to the audience, to people listening. I hope that it comes off clear. Michael, do you happen to have your it plugged into a speaker or something like that?
You know what? I can put headphones on if that's gonna make it.
I don't think it's gonna make a difference. So let's just keep going. So again, for the people that might be joining us, I'm sitting down and talking virtually with Michael Mills. He is the president and CEO of Body and Mind, which is listed on the CSE as BAMM. And we're having a conversation about Cannabis Week that is hosted by the Canadian Securities Exchange. So Michael, when we came to the facility in Vegas early December, you guys were moving into a new space, or acquiring a new space, and going to be having an additional facility.
Yep. So we finished that off earlier this year, and it's a new production facility. We have some office space in there as well. And you know, I think that you can share your experience walking into our facility. We're very cost conscious, and we consider ourselves really good stewards of capital. So when you go to our facility, our cultivation facility. It's not gleaming with stainless steel everywhere, and you know, we're focused all our dollars on growing you know, some of the best cannabis, and creating some of the best products we can, and expanding our business, not necessarily having the most beautiful facility in the world. Our new facility, and I think, you know, what you saw in our kitchen area and our production area was, you know, a relatively you know, small aspect of our operations. And, you know, our mantra really has been, let's, you know, we'll keep the capex as low as we can until we've proven out that our production's doing well, and we, you know, now have the opportunity, you know, have the business argument to spend the money to move into a new facility. So it's been great to get in there. We really enjoy it. And, you know, again, I've really got to thank our team. You know, opening 3 facilities, I think, in less than 3 months has been, in the middle of this pandemic, has been an incredible challenge. And we've got a lot of people who've worked really hard to make that happen.
We'll give a little round for the team.
Very much so.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how have you transitioned at this time during this pandemic, working from home? You know, you guys are a big multi-state operator, so managing teams all over in different states. Tell us how you've been kind of operating and dealing with that as the head honcho.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we have an operations guru. I can call him Trip Hoffman, who's fantastic. He joined BAMM. It seems like a lifetime ago. I think it was a couple of years ago, and he brought a lot of experience from the Colorado market with him, and a lot of development experience as well. So he has been at the forefront of opening these facilities. I think he's been on a number of flights every week, you know, going back and forth and making sure that things are set up properly, and supporting our teams. And, you know, we had talked earlier about sort of the impacts of COVID, and it's, you know, it's been such a huge challenge for everyone, for families, for employers, obviously for first responders, and a huge shout out to the people that are making things continue here. This has been a really, really tough time. And, you know, when you're in medical states, people are using cannabis for medicine, and they're using it for important, you know, as you know, to relieve conditions that are very serious conditions. And being able to be open and help these people has been really paramount. And, you know, obviously we've had to change our business fairly considerably. In California, we've got sneeze guards, and we've moved traffic flow around. And it's also supporting the people that are working in the dispensaries. And I think, you know, Trip and his team have done a fantastic job there.
That's great to have that support, that, you know, you have the right people to take care of these things. I do want to mention, we have turned the comments off, but there is a question box you'll see on the bottom of your screen.
Okay,
if
great.
Any of the audience members do have questions, do submit them on there. I'll be more than happy to go through them and ask Michael at the end of this. Now, I do have a question that came in. So managing teams, since we're on this topic, managing teams multi-state during this time of COVID, how have you managed to keep morale up for your guys, including, you know, your sales associates, bud tenders, all those guys? And has your leadership style changed during this time?
Yeah, I think you have to be, not only have we been managing teams, we've been opening dispensaries at the same time. So to a certain extent, when you're opening a dispensary, it's a really exciting time. I mean, we've been, you know, a couple of these deals we've been working on for 18 months. Yeah. So it's been, it hasn't been business as usual for some of the operations, and then some of the other operations, we've got managers at each of our operations who really know what they're doing. And it's, you know, a lot of obviously it's a high touch time. And I think that, you know, again, going back to Trip and the team, they've worked through a lot of the challenging aspects of moving through this COVID environment. You know, when you think, and I think when everyone thinks back a month ago or a month and a half ago, this was pretty scary, and people were a lot less comfortable, you know, interacting with people. You know, we've seen a big uptake on our online ordering, so that's changed quite a bit. And these are generally people who, you know, they're not first-time shoppers. They know what they want. They would normally go into the dispensary and order there, and then and be comfortable doing that. They want to limit their time, so they're buying online and then a very quick pickup. So depending on the state, and of course every state has different rules, and that's, you know, that's one of the things that I think experientially we bring to the table is we've already seen the varied rules in 4 states. It's relatively easy to look at another state and understand, you know, what their rules are going to look like.
Got it. You know, I think one thing to highlight is that BAMM, being a company around for some time, is there's been no serviceable debt for the company in a while.
Correct.
How do you guys manage to do that?
Yeah, you know,
what's your strategy there is what I should rephrase.
I think the strategy has been not to take debt. We did it. You know, we have taken debt. So, you know, we're comfortable with really all aspects of financing. We've taken debt. We've taken notes. We do have a convertible debt, but we paid to pre-convert that. So, you know, essentially, it's not even convertible debt. It's pre-converted, and those shares will be issued later on this summer. So, I think it's really a function of not biting off more than we can chew. And I think that, you know, there's been in the cannabis industry, there's been a bit of a race to expand into as many areas as you possibly can. And, you know, anybody who understands expansion of a company, if you do it too quickly, it can become very challenging. And then anybody who understands fairly rule-intensive businesses understands that there's another layer of challenges there. And then I would argue that with cannabis, there's even one more layer on top of that. So as you expand out, you need to take everything you learned and make sure that you're doing it well. And then when you have your facilities open, you need to make sure that they're running well before you jump and start opening more. And I think that you know, we've taken a fairly slow, measured approach. We've looked at a lot of different opportunities. We looked at a lot of opportunities last year. We had a lot of feedback from shareholders that, you know, you should be making a big jump into another state. You should be doing this deal. We always felt that the prices last year were too expensive, and that we would be putting, you know, potentially putting the company in jeopardy by biting off more than we could chew at that point. What we really wanted to do was get all these facilities open, get them cash flowing, and then look at the market and see what the market looks like. Obviously, you know, we've seen some deals over the last week or so. The Harvest High Times deal was very interesting, where Harvest basically sold a number of licenses. I think it was 10 licenses or a dozen licenses in California to High Times. So that was, you know, that's a fairly big transaction. We saw Forefront sell some of their assets, I believe in Pennsylvania and Maryland. So I see this happening probably more and more as we move down the timeline. You know, obviously we're keeping our eye on the ground. We're looking at opportunities in the states that we're in the states that we like on a daily basis. So it's really been a function of we're going to grow so much. We're going to make sure that our operations are working well. And then, you know, when we're comfortable with where we are and the revenue starts coming in, and the reality is, you know, with opening these 2 dispensaries, we're beginning to produce revenue from them, you know, pretty much the day they open. So I feel like we're in a very good position going forward.
I thank you very much for sharing that insight, Michael, because, you know, not only is that beneficial and valuable as an investor looking at your company, but also someone that's on the other side of the fence working within the capital markets. It's nice for you to be able to share that insight with us. There is a question that came up based on what we talked about, you know, during COVID. Has your leadership changed, and have you changed kind of the way you're dealing with your employees? There's an audience member that wants to know, what are some of the takeaways from the past 9 weeks during this work at home period that you intend on carrying forward into your leadership?
Yeah, I guess from the, from our standpoint, it really isn't for the company. It isn't really a work at home period at all. Pretty much everyone's been working full time.
Okay.
Obviously, people who don't have to come into the cultivation or the production facility or the dispensary are working from home. Look, everyone at BAMM works hard. This is we have a fantastic culture of people who care about the company, who care about cannabis. And are also working, really hard to continue moving things forward.
Now, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, so I think with respects to COVID, it really highlights how quickly you need to adapt your businesses. Obviously, as COVID, and I think you really, if you go back. If you go back to sort of the beginning of this, when there was the potential for everything to get shut down, it looked at one point like California could go one way or another. So obviously there's a fair amount of work in working with other people in the cannabis industry to just highlight the fact that there are people who are using this for medical reasons, and we really want to be able to give them access.
Absolutely.
And then moving into the dispensaries, moving into the cultivation, some very quick work by our team, to change some of the layouts so that people aren't as close to each other as they were, to stagger shifts so we don't have as many people in the facility as we do, to right size the business.
I don't know if you get it, but just bear with us. And
I think I might have been moving my hands around too much.
well, I'm not sure. There was a little bit of feedback. I think we've got you again.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm not sure where you lost me, but we had to make, and every cannabis business had to make some very rapid changes to their business. I look at the dispensaries in Nevada. Some of these dispensaries who didn't have delivery service went from having a dispensary where they would have 1,000 people a day come in to you can't have anyone in. The only way that you can continue your business is through delivery. And some of these guys, set up a 15, 20 car delivery business, basically an entirely new business in a couple days. And it was really, it's impressive to see. And I think, one of the other things that I really like about this industry is there is all kinds of help going back and forth between various companies and I think, it comes out of so many challenges that this business has had to sort of break through to really get to where we are now. And, one of the things sort of that people really noticed, and I had a lot of conversations with people who weren't involved with the cannabis business, but they started seeing all these articles that cannabis is declared an essential service. They would see lineups for dispensaries. And I think to a certain extent, it's given the industry yet another badge of legitimacy, where people are looking at it and saying, wow, they clearly closed all these other businesses, but they've kept cannabis open, and not in every state, but in a lot of states. So
in majority of the states, yeah.
Yeah, so I see that as being, for the industry, it's fairly positive, and I think it really turned a lot of heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what we were talked about earlier, where, the revenue being generated is undeniable, whether it's during COVID or not during COVID. It's just further highlighted during this time when all other businesses are closed.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's great. Now, speaking of experience, you yourself have over 25 years or maybe more than that experience in working in senior management positions in various industries, media, tech, finance. How has experience in all of those various industries helped you transition into the cannabis space? And what made you take that leap into the cannabis space?
Yeah, I was very fortunate, and I looked at cannabis opening up, really when the Canadian government started talking about some form of legalization. I realized, I think at that point, that people had been working, for years and years and years to have this, considered a medicine. and had been successful in some states, and obviously, Canada opening was very different than Colorado opening. So when I look at a lot of these U.S. founders, you have to give these guys huge kudos, because they were pushing up against a lot of roadblocks. Whereas, when Canada opened up, it was all legal. You could get a bank account, you could list on the Toronto Stock Exchange, you could. So that some of the barriers that the folks in Colorado had, the folks in Washington had, just weren't there. So anybody who's gone through founding a cannabis company in the U.S. certainly deserves a great deal of credit. So I had seen this coming. I thought it was interesting, and I was actually walking down Yonge Street, and I got a call from the chief financial officer at the time of Body and Mind, and he said, "Hey, and I'd worked with him in the past, and he said, we've got this cannabis company. It's in Nevada. We're looking for someone to help us, with communications, with the investor side, and interestingly, I went to there's a group in Toronto called Beacon Securities, great people, and I went to a reception that they had that night, and I ended up meeting their cannabis analyst, a fellow named Vahan, who's really understood the business and was probably one of the first analysts on Bay Street. And I had a very long chat with him about the industry, and he was quite impressed at how much I knew, and that was really through my own interest. And at the end of the conversation, I said, well, do you know these guys at Body and Mind? And he said he did. And at that point, I went back and I talked to a lot of the mentors that I had, and said, what do you think? This is a big move. And really, a few years ago, getting into this business wasn't, it wasn't necessarily yes, let's go right into it. A lot of people felt that it could be career limiting. A lot of people felt that it wasn't going to be around in the way that it was, and I'm kind of glad. And the majority said don't go to the business. I'm glad I kind of ignored them. I went with my gut to a certain extent. So that's how I got into it. I spent about 10 years with Financial Post newspaper. I've managed teams. I understand the capital markets very well. And I think that, as we move into evaluating companies and understanding metrics, that's really where our team brings a lot of strength, both from the financial side, in understanding whether companies make sense to, on an asset purchase or acquisition side, but also on the options cannabis side. And, our team can go in and very quickly take a look at an operation, understand whether that operation is optimized, whether we can optimize it, whether it's fair value. And I think that our team's done a great job, sort of holding off on any acquisition or asset purchases over the last year or so.
Thank you for that. To people that might see me panic a little bit there, I just realized working from home, I left my ringers on my landline. So I was like, I hope they don't start ringing right in the middle. Michael, you've been actually really interesting. We've been having a really interesting conversation here. Lots of great insight for investors, as well as people just generally curious about the cannabis space. I hope you have a little bit more time. We've been on for about half an hour, but I've got a few more questions. You good?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay, perfect. So, you guys have election. Well, before we get into some of the fun stuff, like your brands, the different products that you guys have, as well as the award-winning strains and some of the awards you guys have won, we'll get into that towards the end. But more importantly, it's a very important topic right now, and on the minds of a lot of execs, not just even in the cannabis space. You guys have elections coming up in the U.S. What are your thoughts on that? What would you, in an ideal situation, what would you rather see first, banking versus legalization? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that banking is probably a more likely outcome, and I think that, look, I think the last note I saw was that there's about $13 billion in the legal U.S. cannabis industry. And typically in a lot of industries, it's about 30% cash and the rest is credit card, debit card, electronic transactions. In cannabis, it's all cash. So, you know, cash, the states count cash for their taxes. And I think that there's a real impetus by the government to make it so that people can have, you know, cashless transactions, particularly, you know, at this time. So I would love to see safe banking go through. I think it would, obviously from our aspect, and I think, you know, from the tax collection aspect as well, it would create a lot of efficiencies in the business very, very quickly. And it would support an industry that is already paying, you know, fairly significant city and state taxes at this time. The other thing, I guess, the other thing that I would anticipate we'll see is probably a little bit more state interest in either adopting medical or moving medical from adult rec to adult rec. There's some tax benefit for the state in a big way. And I think that a lot of legislators have seen that, you know, there's enough states that have sort of blazed the trail here without significant, you know, issues that I think there was the perception that we would see. So I think that we've sort of hit a fairly large number. I think the last number I saw was about 67% of people in the states thought that it should be legal on an adult rec basis, and it was in the high 80s for medicinal. So there's been a big change in attitudes. I think the stigma's gone to a certain extent. So that can take some time to move through legislatures. And let's be honest, the state governments and the federal governments, they got their hands full right now. So do I see anything happening quickly? I'd like to. I think safe banking would be fairly easy to move through, but I'm not sure that our timeline or the timeline, you know, for those sort of legislative moves is really going to coincide with all the incredibly important things that have to happen right now.
Interesting. I do want to mention, as part of Cannabis Week, you're the fourth CEO that we've interviewed this week, and you guys all have similar viewpoints on banking. This might be a question you choose to decide you don't want to answer, and you do have that option. Does it matter who gets in November? Who gets into the hot seat?
You know, I'd rather not answer political questions. It's yeah, look, it's I think it's going to be a hotly contested election here, and if we think that it seemed like, you know, I just look back at when COVID first started, and it seems like a lifetime ago. And when you look out to the November election and all the things that, you know, our society is going to have to deal with, there's a lot of changes coming down the pipe, and changes in the way that families operate, changes in the way the businesses operate. I think that, you know, making a guess or at who's gonna win would be a real challenge at this point.
Fair enough. We'll leave it at that. Why don't we get into, there's a couple of questions from our audience members. I'm going to hop in there and see what the questions are.
Yeah, sounds good.
You know, if you choose to answer them, I'll run them by you. If you feel that it's a valid question, go ahead. So just give me a second here.
You've already warmed up the hot seat with the last question in here.
I think we've been through a lot of these questions already, though, so I'll leave them alone. Why don't we get into some fun stuff?
Sure.
Let's talk about your brands, products.
Yeah, you know, I think that we really made our name in Nevada on really, really good strains that were grown. We grow in small batches. We grow in small rooms. We hand trim everything. It's craft cannabis to a certain extent, and it really comes out of people. You know, comes from people who really understand the business, who really understand how to grow. You know, we release new strains every once in a while, and they're sold right out.
Well, I do want to jump in. There's a reason why you guys have some of the most award-winning strains out there in products. You know, there's four major awards and cups that you guys have participated in and won in. We'll go through that. But is there a particular brand that comes up in as
You know, people really like our purple punch, but you know, we're always moving our strains around, right? So you know, we'll even if that, like White Lightning was a strain or that people really liked, and then you know we took a break from it and introduced new strains. So we're moving strains around on a fairly consistent basis. You know, one of the things that we've got some really good feedback on is something called live resin or live. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, you basically you take the plant and instead of drying it and then using it for extraction, you actually take the plant and you freeze it. So it's basically frozen fresh, and that turns into your extract, and you use that for extraction. And it's a very sought after product, and the feedback on it is fantastic.
What about those pesky little pretzels of yours?
You know, you know, I love the pretzel bites. Anybody who tastes them seems to you know just come back with great reviews. Yeah, you know, the folks in the kitchen did a great job coming up with that product, and it's definitely a fan favorite in Nevada.
Yeah, it was actually a real treat and a highlight to be in your facility and watch them make them. And I think actually you guys were getting ready for your staff Christmas party at that time.
That's right. That's right.
There was a lot of good stuff. So let's get into these. So we've got a little bit of time. I know Instagram cuts us off at the hour that we've started it. That
Sure.
happened to me previously, so I want to end it off in a good fashion here.
Of course.
And not have our conversation get cut off. But let's talk about these awards. So you guys have High Times Top 10. There's the NorCal, which is the Northern California Secret Cup, as well as the Emerald Cup.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of those and you know, it's quite a big accomplishment from a consumer standpoint to be having some of your strains and products recognized with those cups. I think you guys were supposed to participate in the Jack Hare Cup as well. That was, I think, postponed now due to COVID.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, and we actually backed out of, I think, the last High Times one. We didn't participate just because we had too much on the go. But yeah, I mean, you know, obviously being singled out in any of these is a huge accomplishment. Being singled out in a number of them, it makes a huge difference. You know, we really have a great team of people, and you know, sometimes you're looking, you know, sometimes your awards for a hybrid flower, sometimes it's for an indica. You know, our Sin Mint Cookies was our indica winner, and you know, it comes back to the fact that people really care about what they're producing, and then they want to put the very best product out in the market, and it really, obviously winning these awards is a huge kudos to us, but I think to a certain extent, the feedback that we get from the bud tenders, from the dispensary owners, and really from the people who are buying our product or patients that are using it, that means so much to us.
Absolutely. You know, and that obviously speaks into your products like the pretzels, because without those award-winning strains, the pretzels wouldn't be that good. I'm saying, is that true? Would that be fair?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, and you know, when we first started as a medical company, and this was before my time, you know, they were really innovative, and because you had to have a doctor's prescription to get a medical card, they were a little bit more forgiving with the amount of THC that went into each product. You know, I think we had 100 milligram granola bars, we had infused fruit, we had a whole myriad of really neat, innovative products. And then, of course, when Adult Rec came along, and very wisely, they said, you know what, you can't have these. There's just too much danger here for people who are trying this for the first time, or whatever. So they brought everything down to 10 milligrams. So each of the pretzel bites is 10 milligrams. And so, you know, and that's just, and that happens in every state, right? Because to a certain extent, this business is still trying to find the right path, and the states are always going to be adjusting the rules and changing the rules. We feel like we're very much on top of it, and you know, have great dialogue with the various state legislatures.
Michael, I have a question for you. Pardon if I'm being ignorant about this, but I'm sure a lot of other consumers have these same questions. So there are different strains of cannabis that affect you differently. Now,
Correct.
10 milligrams of, let's say, a top tier Kush or something like that strain would affect you differently than 10 milligrams of a different strain that might not be as strong as that. Wouldn't that be right?
Yeah, certainly every strain generally will have a different effect. You'll get a different effect from an indica than you will from a sativa. Generally, sativas are considered more uplifting, whereas indicas are, generally, better for sort of chilling or sleeping. Look, and beyond that, there's sort of an entourage effect from the terpenes. I think that cannabis seems to affect everyone differently to a certain extent, and that's that creates challenges around what does this do, what does that do. I think we have some general there's some general ideas about what an indica will do and what a sativa will do, and very interestingly I read something not that long ago that as cannabis is becoming more prevalent throughout the world, we're seeing a few different ways that countries are dealing with selling cannabis. And what they're finding in the countries that have sort of given an online presence is you're getting people who are trying cannabis for the first time without really any education. And I look at the amount of knowledge that our bud tenders and our managers and the dispensaries have, and when I go into dispensaries in Las Vegas, they're incredibly knowledgeable. And having that one-on-one relationship with someone who really knows what they're doing, particularly for the first-time consumer, I think is incredibly important. And I think that the retail, I think that to a certain extent, COVID's going to change the way people are buying for a long time. But I think that one-on-one bud tender relationship is incredibly important, so that people can really get good answers based on their personal needs and wants, for the questions that you've asked.
Perfect. Well, looks like we're at the top of the hour here, so we'll start our little wind down.
Sounds good.
Let you talk to our audience a little bit about any message that you want to pass along, because obviously at the end of the day, they're here to hear and listen from you, to hear what you have planned with BAMM coming up and where you guys have come from. So we've been through the past. We're going to get into some of that. I do want to mention a quick thank you to all our participants that have taken part in Cannabis Week from the CSE. And I do want to say tomorrow I'll be speaking with Steve White from Harvest, and we'll be talking to him and getting some more insights as well. So our audience members, you can find this content available for 24 hours when we finish on our Instagram channel. Or if you want to view it at a later time, it's available on the CSE YouTube channel, which is csetv.com. Feel free to find our content. You'll also be able to view any of our other previous podcasts that we've done, or any of our on the street interviews. You might want to check out all of those. Why don't we wrap up, and I'll let you take away with a little bit of a message that you want to pass along to the audience members that are here to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been growing slowly, and to a certain extent, we've been growing fairly quietly. We haven't been out there sort of really beating the drum in the market in a huge way. We chose to, grow our company through fairly inexpensive routes, and we're quite excited to start to see the revenue streams from the new dispensaries open up as we start to finalize some of the definitive deals that we have. We'll see increased revenue. So we're very comfortable with the scenario that we're in right now. We're looking forward to taking our operational expertise and moving it into new opportunities. We see a lot of opportunity in the states that we're in. We see opportunities in the states that we want to get into as well. I think that we've proven to shareholders that we can execute without using a great deal of capital. We're a very lean team. We've always been cost focused. And we're going to take, our successes and move them forward here. And just before I close out, I would really like, from the bottom of my heart, to thank all the people that are out there helping in this environment. This is probably one of the most challenging things most people and most businesses have gone through. The people who are working in hospitals, the first responders, the people who are coming to work every day, and keeping our business and keeping other businesses running and helping people. It really is. It deserves incredible kudos, and I just really would like to thank those people.
You know, Michael, that's a very genuine comment from your end, and that sentiment rings across from all platforms and people involved. I do want to say thank you very much to not just yourself, but to the entire BAMM team, not only when, we came to visit and things like that, but to help continue the growth of the company. We hope the best for you guys and continue to thrive in these times as well as beyond. Stay safe, healthy, and happy during these times.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Anil.
Cheers, Michael. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.